Hello and welcome back to awtoolbox.com. My name is Glenn Keller, and in this demonstration we are continuing on with the administration talks, and we want to focus in on ensuring that we have all of the administration capabilities installed, and if we don't, then we need to add one in real quick. So again, if you're not responsible for installation and all you do is put a request in to have the feature there, this will also help you understand which feature to request to have it added in. But either way, I have demonstrated most of the applications available here on the Active Admin as well as on the Active Architect at a very high level. And one of the ones that we weren't able to look at is the preferences. So preferences came into Active Workspace a few versions ago. They provide us the ability to switch different settings in the interface, everything controlling the properties that are on cells when you're looking at search results in the list view, to how style sheets hook up to the individual objects. So to get that installed, as I see it as not, I need to go back into the Deployment Center software here, and this is primarily used by your infrastructure teams to install the components, or maybe you if you're installing this and setting it all up on a sandbox. In this environment, you can take demonstrations. We have different classes on it, but in this environment, we want to go to environments here. Now, you will usually have one or many environments depending on if you have a dev, test, QA system, and then a production system. You may have more than one environment, but either application or either environment that you go to, you need to select the applications list. This is where the different administrative features are selected in. And you can see already, we can see a couple of them. Access Manager is right here. If we go down, you can see things like audit definitions. You can come down and see user management, which is the people location. So this list is essentially that list. And I've got most of them, but I'm going to go ahead and click the edit button up here. And let's get the other one added in. So this will load up the available ones, and you can scroll through and see each one of these if you would like to. But basically you can see all the grayed out ones. What I'm looking for is preferences, and I'm going to just use the basic browser search once this is loaded to highlight the preference management capability. I'm going to go ahead and select that. There was only one result in the search, so I should be good. So this is how you come do it. Just make sure they line up. There is a features reference that's available on the Support Center that I highly recommend checking out, but go ahead and click Update Selected Applications at that point. The system will spin for a second and we'll add it to the configuration, and what you need to do is go to Components, validate everything's still hunky-dory or 100%, and then go to Deploy and deploy that feature out, which we will do in this video. So here what it's doing is it's taking inventory of what was there and what's new and what it needs to add, and it's building the associated configurations. So it has refreshed, and if I scroll down, you can see that Preference Management now has pending install on it. So we're going to go ahead and go to Components. You can click it at the top or the bottom. And then once we get into go to Components, I'm just going to give it a quick scan. And then just note that the status of this, a couple of them are going to get updated. So it will tell you what features need to be updated. It needs to add the client feature so that we actually have the buttons to press once we get there, the interface. It needs to update the new extension in the BMIDE definition, and it needs to update the corporate server, which will actually install the feature, any server-side components that it needs. So I'm going to say go to deploy at this point, and then I can go in and generate my install scripts. So once this generates, we're just going to go through a mechanism of deployment. Again, for a deeper dive on this deployment process, we highly recommend checking out our videos. We've got one for installing a sandbox environment, as well as one for upgrading to 2506. And we're going to come out with more fresh installs and things of that sort. All right, so this has generated. So since it's only updating the Active Workspace client, the corporate server, and the BMIDE, I should not have any deployments that are needed outside of it, any mass updates or anything like that. Just server-side deployment. So I'm going to go to the location that it says that install went to. I can just copy it from right here. Let's go ahead and open it up. All right, so it is the one from today, and then we can see the training instructions, etc. So I always do this just to kind of reduce the file path. It's pretty long at the moment. I'll take it and I'll throw it into something like my temp directory. You can see I've already done this a couple of times, and I'm going to paste it in there. And then I'll go ahead and extract it here. And that'll just shorten my overall path. I won't run into any operating system limits for Windows and Linux. You don't have that issue. But once I go in here, this is the deployer. So I'm just going to grab that directory. And then I'm going to open up a command prompt with administrative rights. So at this point in the command prompt, I'll just go ahead and cd to that location. Deploy is what we want, .sh for Linux. And then we can do a -h to get the help if you want. And what's cool is the help does write out a list of information against everything, but it also gives you a couple of examples at the bottom. So I'm going to use deploy.bat -dc username equals dc admin. This is the one that you use to log in with. -dc password equals dc admin in my case. And then I do also need to provide the software location, and that's just going to be where my media is. So in our case, we were working with media in the C apps directory, and we have our media in our repository. So if I come into C apps deployment center, there's my repository and there's my software, and you can see it's sitting right there. So I'm going to grab it, copy it, come in here, and right click to execute. So this will go through and it will try and deploy and restart everything that needs to be restarted. Before you go through deployments with server installations, it is recommended to go through and stop the Teamcenter server manager. So a lot of these processes can be stopped preemptively to speed up the process of the deployment. In the Rich client, the older installation tool, it used to tell us when things needed to be stopped or started, and it does, but it's inside of the deployment documentation. So if you are executing this and you get an error, just make sure that your services are all down. And the ones that we like to shut down in our case are things like the server manager, anything in addition to the process manager. We don't like to shut down the FSC and the Vault service. Those three right there can remain running. The other ones can be shut down. So we didn't do that in this case. So if we get an error, we get an error, and we'll use that opportunity to troubleshoot a little bit. So let's come back after the deployment is completed, and we'll validate the Active Workspace installation for preferences. All right, coming back in, it did absolutely fail here. And if you look, the error in the display is the Business Modeler 2-tier file processing failed. This has to update something in the TC root directory, and typically that's the cause. Now you could take a deeper look at this deployer debug log to find out exactly what's going on here. But what we know is that we need to shut down the other services. So I'm going to shut down the dispatcher module, which happens to be running out of that directory, scheduler, and the client components. Now, if you don't have these, obviously you don't have to shut them down. I'm stopping this one. I have the older service there. I'm going to shut off my indexing service as well as my revision and my server manager services, just making sure everything is stopped. There they are. Vault needs to remain running. Suggestion builder can stop. So in essence, the only ones that are left on are any of the deployment center ones are fine, but the only Teamcenter ones are going to be the FSC, the process manager, and the Volt service. So at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and rerun this. Hit the up arrow and execute again. And we'll let it go through and see if that corrects the issue. Alrighty, so after we shut down those services and closed any applications that were running, essentially this has completed. So once that is done, you can review the logs it says in the directory that it executed from. So I could come in here, I could jump over to that ctemp directory and scope out the logs, but it all worked just fine. I need to go back to my services window, hit the refresh button at the top here. That's this little green button with the refresh or recycle button on it. And then if you come down, you can see it has automatically started a couple of the services, one of them being the server manager. Now you can go back through and start the indexing service and do all of the little tasks that you need to do. We're just going to go ahead and leave it at this. I don't really need my dispatcher at the moment. So the server manager is good. So now I just need to come back in. I should have a new TC server process. So I'm going to hit refresh here. And I am back into the system. So we've done the full deploy, and actually you can tell that the preferences is here. So I can select that now. I'm in the active admin location, and you can see that the preferences manager interface comes in. So this was the last of the interfaces and the different applications that I wanted to show and talk about in the previous video. But we wanted you to have a firm understanding of what you needed to do in order to get those components into Active Workspace. So we hope you followed along there, but this is the preferences application. You have a whole bunch of different commands in here. There's thousands upon thousands, and depending on how many objects that you have or how many features you have installed, you may have more or less, and they control everything from the amount of versions on your datasets to the individual interface components like the summary style sheet and what is attached to that, pretty much everything. Even little identifiers in the corner that we can add that identify the system as production or development. The sky's the limit, and you'll be interacting with preferences a lot. This is the only place that I know of that has a full list of all the preferences in the system, whether they impact the rich client or Active Workspace. This is that list. Now, it does give us access and the availability to share or to import and export the components. So we still have full export import capabilities, but again, we will also talk about another tool called the administration data tools that provides us good reporting capabilities as well as migration capabilities. So preferences should be there. I highly recommend having it. And that is the last of those applications. So thanks for tuning in with us on this one as we understood how we can get a new feature installed in the system. If you are still working in a Teamcenter Environment Manager or TEM interface, then just note that you also need to look at the difference between server extensions and client extensions when you do that install. Thanks everybody for joining.